sexual identity. Those two words don't go together. If we identify people by their sexual urges, we will continue to crumble as a society. That is not your identity. At your funeral, people will say, he was my father, he was my brother, he was my friend, he was my coach, he was my mentor. Those are identity statements. If you take, for example, a sexual abuse victim, if you try to tell her her feelings of being uncomfortable in her body and her sexual urges are her identity, they are who she is. No, we don't do that with sexual abuse victims. We tell them you are a daughter, you are loved, you are worthy of protection, you are valued, you have gifts and talents and abilities. There's so many words that we can speak into a young person's identity. We do not believe in sexual identity. As Christians, we don't believe in that because Jesus didn't call the woman caught in adultery an adulteress. He called her forgiven.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Strong by Design podcast. So thankful to have you. Thank you for joining us today. Another great episode here, talking about something that's certainly at the top of the trending conversation these days, especially. The summer of 2024, starting in June. And this is a conversation that we've been wanting to have on the show, but sometimes you have to have the right guest in order to kind of go deep on something. And we have the perfect guest for today's conversation, and I'm excited to introduce Jennifer to the show. What I'd like to first do is take a second to say thank you to our past listeners and people who've been downloading and listening for years. We really appreciate you coming back and sharing it with friends and family. Obviously, we talk about a lot of things here on Strong by Design, all things body, mind, and spirit, and gives us the opportunity to have very different conversations, but meaningful conversations with men and women from all walks of life and different backgrounds from all over the world, and who are doing pretty amazing things. And this podcast gives them a platform. And for any new listeners, welcome to the show. Now you can go back and listen to hundreds of past episodes of all the different things. If you're into fitness, we got it. Holistic health, we have it. If you're into God, we got it. So we have a little bit of everything. And so all things to help you live a life strong by design. Our guest today, Jennifer Strickland, is an author and a TEDx speaker, a former model, as you can tell, beautiful woman, and founder of the You Are More ministry that teaches people their worth in God's eyes, things that we've talked about here on Strong by Design before. She's the creator of Let's Write, a program that helps authors finish their books so they can impact lives through their work. And her latest work is I Am a Woman, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube or some other platform. You can see the book over her shoulder. And that's really largely our discussion today. And a very meaningful, a very now type of topic in a world of confusion that's trying to replace God with some other form of some other idol, and it's not working out very well. And I think our young people are very confused, and are people that are trying to live biblically or are trying to base their life in truth, have been quiet for far too long. And so we need more bold men and women like Jennifer to step up and speak truth into the world. And I think what she's doing is just fantastic. So Jennifer, thank you for being on Strong by Design. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I am too. When I came across your story and what you were doing, I was immediately intrigued and wanted to have you as a guest on the show because we have touched on this topic in different ways in the past few years. And I just thought, wow, this is, just just felt right. And there aren't always people who are willing to talk about these. I've had conversations privately with people who are physicians or, in the medical community or, experts in their field. And some of them kind of distance themselves from some of these types of conversations because maybe they don't want the blowback, or they're a little bit worried about the consequences of having those types of conversations. And all we're trying to do is speak truth, and truth that's been around for thousands of years, that all of a sudden in the last decade or two has all of a sudden become like taboo, or has been an area, a source of confusion for people. So thank you for your boldness, for sure. And can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, what brought you to what you're doing today? Was there a point in your life that you just said, okay, I gotta step up here and people need to hear my voice?
Well, I've been speaking about the impact of media on teen girls in particular for many years. I came from the modeling industry. And so I was a model for 15 years and worked for Ford models and all over Europe, and Giorgio Armani, did the fashion shows, was in Vogue and blah, blah, blah. And I left the modeling industry because of this lie that we are not good enough the way that we are, that we have to be perfect to be loved. We have to change our bodies to be accepted and to be beautiful. And I saw so many young women cave to that pressure of perfection on them, and, ended up with an eating disorder myself, and left the business, went back to school, got my master's degree in writing because I always wanted to be a writer. And I started out just wanting to write one book. So
that always happens, right? Yeah. I just want to write one book.
Yeah. I ended up writing Girl Perfect, and the story of my life in the modeling industry and my encounter with Christ that led me to walk away from that business and to use my voice to teach healthy self-image and identity for young women. And so I've been doing that now for about 20 years. And when I saw this huge wave of gender dysphoria descend like a virus on young women in our nation and boys as well, and I saw this mandated affirmation-only therapy for young people in which we're affirming a lie that you are born in the wrong body. That's a terrible lie that I don't think people are really thinking about very well, because we would never tell a child with muscular dystrophy or a cleft palate that they were born in the wrong body and that they were some kind of mistake that we needed to fix. And that lie alone really moved me towards speaking up about healthy self-image and healthy body image for young people, which doesn't separate the body from the soul, doesn't separate the body from the spirit. This is a very divisive movement. And that's why people are afraid to speak up. But at the same time, I understand. I had an experience with thought reform and mind control after I left the modeling industry. And that led to me learning how thought reform movements work. And one of the ways that they work is by penalizing the people who ask the hard questions. And so I'm not afraid of a movement that punishes people for speaking the truth. I had an experience in my life where I had to stand up against a movement that was harming people. And so I'm very well equipped to do this and to stick my neck out there and tell the truth to young people about identity and sexuality.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like it's such a disservice to especially women, but also men, that all of a sudden women-only things are becoming infiltrated by men who feel like they're maybe women and allowed to.
Feel like
I mean,
a woman.
Sports is such an easy example, right? Where all of a sudden these mentally ill people, and they do need help, and you feel for them because there is something going on. There's something wrong there, where they feel like they're in the wrong body. Hey, I know. I'll just be a woman. That makes me feel better. and now competing at a very high level and kind of running away with the competition because biologically they're male. And it's such a disservice to women everywhere. I know a lot of women. There's Riley Gaines. There's been a lot of women that have spoken out about such things, and it's just so. If you told somebody probably just 10 years ago where we would be in 2024, they wouldn't believe you. They would think that it was some type of like a joke, or that you were trying to put them over on something. They really wouldn't. It has gotten to the point of being laughable in some regards. What's been shared and what's out there, what's getting media attention, and I feel like you try to speak truth to people, but I think a lot of people are subtly, like, they're angered. They're frustrated and they're angry, and I think people maybe don't have the type of background like you have and the experience to speak about it in a way that's very kind of coming from a place of education, and you kind of know what's kind of going on. You can articulate it in a way, and I feel like maybe that's holding people back, because people want to, I think, say something, but they don't know how to say it in a way that's not going to just push people away. Can you speak on that a little bit? Maybe is that part of what people want to say something, but they're not sure how to deliver it in a way that'll be heard, or does the other side just not even want to hear?
I think when we get overly preoccupied about how people are going to receive us or perceive us, that's actually not healthy. The truth is that we can be honest. We're created male and female with purpose and intention. To be a man is to be stronger physically than a woman. We know that men can punch twice as hard as women can. We know that the average man can actually kill the average woman with his bare hands. Okay, that's the truth. And so I'm not afraid to say, look, I am not going to stand down while future generations of girls will be left with the fallout. They will say, our children and our grandchildren's generation will say, why did our parents not stand up against this? Because when we allow men and women's prisons, sports, changing facilities, bathrooms, we promote male violence, and the other side doesn't want to recognize that, but we can come back with the facts. 98 to 99% of sex offenders are male. Men are wired differently than women are. They can be more physically aggressive. And so the differences between men and women right now are very, very important. But I want to kind of route this conversation a little bit to how did we get here?
Yeah.
And then how do we restore the meaning of gender? So we got here by men being emasculated. Okay. So since we're just having conversation.
Right, no, but
I know
this
you're
does
the one
go
who's supposed to be
back.
asking the questions.
Yeah, no, this goes back several decades.
Yeah.
I mean, could you say that this, and I'm all for like strong women. I love strong women. My wife's a very strong woman. You know what I mean? She's a registered nurse. She was in veterinary medicine for a long time. She's tough. And I love it. She's also the mother of my children, and she's nurturing and loving and can do things that I can't do. And that's okay. And something happened about 40, 50 years ago, right? This kind of woman's movement where they wanted to kind of be seen as strong like men, right? And it kind of started the emasculation of men. Is that where you're getting to?
Yeah, absolutely. The feminist movement came out breathing fire. They came out with mantras like smash the patriarchy. These boots are made for stomping. They'll stomp all over you. Okay, well, how would that work in your marriage?
Right.
That doesn't work. A movement of women that is life-giving will honor men and honor the home, honor the family, honor marriage, honor children. The feminist movement emasculated men, told men to sit down and shut up when it came to women's rights. And a lot of men now feel that they're not allowed to speak on behalf of the family. You know, the word male in biblical Hebrew, where I go into this in my book, but to be a male, okay, is to speak and act on behalf of the family and to remember the commands of God and pass them on to the next generation. A male, you know, Christ is the first male, laid down his life for his bride. A male is expected in God's language, okay, to fear him, obey him, pass his commands on to the next generation, and speak and act on behalf of the family. That's why in the garden, God called, even though Eve ate the fruit first, God called on Adam.
Yeah, Adam was there, letting it all go down.
Adam was right there, and he went to Adam first because the male speaks and acts on behalf of the family. So, unfortunately, the feminist movement silenced men and said, you don't even have a right to the life of your own child, and put all the responsibility for the human family on the woman, which she was never meant to carry that weight. Told men that fathers were not important because they don't get to decide if their own babies live or die. And also dehumanized children and dishonored children, and therefore dishonored the name woman. Because the name woman, the first woman, Eve, her name means life-giving. It is an action of the body, soul, and spirit. A woman brings life to the home, to the community, to the nation. She manages the borders of the home and the family. That's the word female in biblical Hebrew, nekeva. One who manages the borders of the family. One who brings life. And so, unfortunately, the feminist movement taught girls, your name does not mean life.
Wow.
To be life-giving.
Wow.
You're not to honor men, the things that bring life.
Yeah.
I mean, even woman was created to stabilize mankind from the side of man, to stabilize.
That's right.
And channel his masculine energies.
Men would be, men are good together, but men overall would be lost without their counterpart. Absolutely lost. But then you could say the same in inverse, right? I mean, that's why we're designed to be together and to complement each other and to complete each other. And it's not to sound cliche in any way. It's by design. And by trying to alter that design, it's going to lead to things that are out of whack. And then look what's happened. Fatherlessness has been a growing, trending problem for decades now. And that's probably about the same time it started. Fatherlessness was not an issue in like the 40s and the 50s. Like family units were together and people were strong.
The message was that fathers are not important. And when we don't give boys something to reach for, to esteem, that you're created to be a warrior, the head of a household, the head of a family, like you are created to lay down your life to protect women. So because they were just told to sit down and shut up, unfortunately, it really started with that. It started with the emasculation of men, the dehumanizing of children, and then now we're at disrespect for the word woman, because if you don't respect our male counterpart, you're not going to respect yourself.
Wow. It's funny because as you're talking about this, and I love this because I love when a obviously strong woman who's well-spoken, has a lot of life experience, you're able to talk from have you ever heard of Dr. Meg Meeker? Meeker Parenting?
No.
You would love her stuff. She's a 30-plus year pediatrician who's an author of several books and speaks about why dads matter and how important that father figure is in the home for children to flourish and all of these things. And my mind, I can't help it, I'm like a big movie guy. My mind goes to strong characters in movies like the Rocky character or Leonidas in the 300 movie. Both of those characters, if we're just going to single out a few people, what did they have in common? Well, they're both very tough men, yes, very strong-willed men. They had amazingly strong women in their lives that helped them, that guided them, that gave them advice. It made the men better. It made them better warriors. It made them fight harder, right? And it's like that's the way we're designed. It's the way things work. And why are we messing with that right now? Like, what's the hidden agenda there to destroy the family and destroy these roles that men and women have?
Well, if we destroy the family, we destroy the nation.
Yeah.
And as you tear down womanhood, you tear an entire nation down. And this movement tore the nation down with their words and their actions. And so we have an incredible opportunity right now to build our nation back up with truth about what it really means to be a woman. And what you just described is the definition for the word woman, which we find in Genesis. God says he's going to need a helper corresponding to him, but even that's not a good translation, sadly. It means basically he's going to need someone to rescue him, someone to help him, someone to come alongside of him, challenge him, bring out the best in him, warn him, watch his back and warn him about what she may see. Womanhood is really about perception. And interesting Bible verse in Ecclesiastes describes, if you look at the human body, it describes the men as the strong shoulders and the woman as the eyes.
Wow.
That men have the strength to carry the family, the community, the nation. Like they have that strength, but woman also, she's strong and she brings perception and insight.
Yes. Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's this beautiful, complementary, like blessed union.
Yes.
And the enemy from the beginning has been trying to divide the union and destroy women because we bring life. We're the life givers. And we're not going to be destroyed because with male-female unity, we can take dominion, we can subdue, we can rule. That's what the Bible says, is where we stand by side, nothing can stop us.
That's right. Yeah, it does definitely seems like there's been this several decades long attack on the family unit, and if you can attack that and really break it apart and lessen its importance in society and its you erode and you unravel. And I mean, look where we are in a fairly short period of time. It's noticeable. I mean, I was still in college in the 90s, and this maybe was at its infancy back then, but when divorce was kind of becoming an option and a really good alternative, of course, and nowadays it just seems like people are looking at marriage at just that's just if divorce is kind of just like it's there if I need it. It feels like people have lost their thick skin. They're not tough. They're not willing to put in the work to fix things, and that's been okayed by society, and that men can marry each other and women can marry each other, and if people want kids, there's lots of different options for that. And so it's just kind of a scary place that we've gotten to, and it didn't happen overnight, certainly, but it is happening, and you can't ignore it at this point. And so where do we go from here? What exciting things are you doing here in the last several years to talk about this and to help the women certainly to be more bold and to stand up for their womanhood?
Well, let's see.
I know, right? Where to start?
I did hundreds and hundreds of hours of research in a few years into this new book, I Am a Woman, and it explores the deep roots of those words in Genesis, because the words male, female, man, woman, mother, father, in God's language, they're body, soul, and spirit. God's language is Hebrew, and each word, it's called the language of transcendence, because it has actions for the body, the soul, and the spirit. It's not like English that is, we're double X chromosomes and it's all just physical. That there's meaning in these words. There's action in these words. For example, mother, we'll take the word mother in Hebrew. It means glue. It means that she is the glue of the family. Her name actually just means glue. The glue that keeps the family together with her work and her love. And I want to teach this generation the meaning of the words, so that when, for example, recently the government starts throwing around the idea that all women should enlist. Okay, well, we're the glue of the home and the family and the nation. We're not leaving. We're not going to all abandon our post of the children if the men need to go to war.
Yeah.
And women can go to war too, right? But see, by them even suggesting that, if women and girls do not know, if they think, well, we're just all these lies, we're the same as men, we're no different than men, we can do everything a man can do, that's really not true.
No.
We can, right?
Because
we can bless our military, but
the opposite's not true either.
Well, of course not. Yeah, of course not.
I can't do what a woman can do.
Yeah. Not. Absolutely not. I mean, it is truly ridiculous. So for one thing, I wrote the book, and I'm challenging in the book, challenging pastors, men, women. How about we answer the what is a woman question? Let's just answer it. It's been circulating around for years. Gender theorists can't answer it. Matt Walsh wrote the book and did the documentary, but I want to answer that question. I want to answer, what is a woman? She's a life giver. She's a border keeper. She's a guardian of the home and family. She's a strong helper and rescuer to mankind. That is who we are. And people, especially Christians, need an answer to that question. And so that's why I launched my I Am a Woman podcast. I've written the book. We're doing book clubs. We want to get book clubs going around the nation. And men can read the book too, because it says you can't study the word female. You can't talk about what a woman is unless you talk about what it means to be a man.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we want to speak the truth of identity into this next generation. That's just my passion.
I look at your book, certainly, and I'm interested in reading it because I see it as a real gateway into kind of learning more about, like, maybe what your spouse or your partner needs. And where she's coming from, and how to see things maybe from her perspective a little bit better. There's a lot of great, obviously, relationship books and things like Love and Respect, and lots of those things. So that's almost where I see your book in a way as a guide or a step by step for women and for men to kind of navigate what if you go back. Obviously not that long ago, as I've said, but I mean, you go back centuries and centuries, and people would very easily be able to define what is a man, what is a woman, without any kind of controversy. And they would have easily said, "Oh, well, a man is the leader of the house, the strong, protector, provider, right? And then the woman is the mother, the nurturing, loving, caring, kind connector." Of the family and of the community. And I feel like it was such an easy thing to talk about and discuss for probably, millennia, up until just the last decade or so. Doesn't that seem just so odd? That it almost, in a way, it just feels like out of nowhere, this weird, I can't define these simplistic, terms anymore. That we could without any issues for a lifetime.
Sure. And I think what most people really don't understand is that we have been in a thought reform movement. Okay. So thought reform, Lipton's criteria for thought reform and mind control as used by Mao Zedong in China. He gives 8 criteria for thought reform. And I go over all of these in depth at the end of my book. Okay. But let's just talk about one tenet for thought reform. It's called loaded language. Okay. Loaded language is when they take old terms and give them new meaning and create new terms and then punish people who don't use them. So these new terms, misgendering, dead naming, non-binary, pansexual, homosexual, sapiosexual, whatever, all these, they're funneling hundreds of gender and sexual identities, and it's coming top down from the government that has put in, it's really coming from China, which is funding this movement through the Biden administration and previous administrations, funneling that originally with the feminists started the women's studies programs, and now it's called gender studies. These things have been funneled into, like, GLAAD, for example, creates all this new language, and you will find it on almost every single university campus website, which I tracked in the book, in which they're telling kids that things like BDSM can be bondage and domination, all this stuff can be life-giving, can actually be practiced in a healthy sexual relationship. And all these sexual and gender identities have funneled into our university systems and are now all the way down into the kindergarten classrooms and Disney and all the gender books. And that's one reason why I sent people also to Amazon, because when people study gender and sexuality, I want them to find my book. I want them to find it because of all the books, right? And now it's in all of our television programs and the cartoons, little boys dancing around in skirts saying, I'm free to be me. So this whole message of gender and sexual identity is a thought reform, brainwashing movement that is top down, government down. It's not like the Black rights movement, which is from the people up, a people's uprising. That's what needs to happen now. Is there needs to be a righteous resistance among the mothers and fathers and the people up. We're going to need to overturn it.
Yeah, that's well put. Absolutely. And we've all seen, depending on how much news coverage we watch anymore, because most of it's just absolutely appalling. We don't even really watch local, regular television anymore. It's ridiculous. The ads, the shows, the agendas that are just so obvious there. But I've seen some of these interviews, probably just scrolling on my phone, of people at school board meetings and things talking about, like, how is this book? I can't even read this book in this room right now because I can't even say some of what's in here. And this book is approved at a library at an elementary school. And it talks about intercourse and all of these other things. Like, are you kidding me? Like, the sexualization of our children is just unbelievable, and it's absolutely coming and dripping from the top. And these people of power and who can, kind of get their will done in various ways. And it's really disturbing because obviously this was not something that was evident in my childhood. Like, those things didn't exist in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, really. But they sure do now. And boy, oh boy, parents should be pissed. Like, they should be very angry and be speaking out about this. And but of course, it's suppressed too in media coverage, right? They're gonna hide these big networks and big conglomerates. They're gonna hide a lot of the pushback as much as they can.
Oh, they do. That's another tenet of thought reform movement. It's called mystical manipulation, in which the media or the things that you're allowed to see and hear is controlled. Yeah. Certainly, they did that in China. They did that, and they've done that in communist Russia, and that's what we're experiencing. Yeah, for sure.
It's unbelievable. Like, you wouldn't even like if the fathers of the nation saw this in a crystal ball in the late 1700s, they'd be like, "Yep, they're ruining themselves from within, right? Because of Abraham Lincoln's words, right? It's basically this great nation would only fall because of from within. It's not going to be from the outside, and that's what we're seeing is just massive deterioration of what made us the United States of America, and where our strength was. It's constitutional, and that's what's getting completely like flipped.
Yeah, it is. And, we took the 10 Commandments off the wall in the schools, and we abolished prayer in the schools, and there's a whole history to it. And unfortunately, we're now in a culture that worships sexuality and teaches this concept of sexual identity, which, I would like to talk about. My mom was a sex education teacher in the 1970s. In 80s, she wrote one of the school district's first sex ed curriculums, and I took my mom's sex ed class when I was in 7th grade.
Was that a little bit uncomfortable having mom teach that?
So yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. My mom taught sex ed to almost everybody I know in my town. But they taught the female reproductive system and the male reproductive system, and she defined terms for her students. And they taught, good decision making when it comes to sex, drugs, and alcohol. And now at this point, these programs are teaching sexual identity. Okay. Those two words don't go together. Okay. If we identify people by their sexual urges, we will continue to crumble as a society. That is not your identity. At your funeral, people will say, he was my father, he was my brother, he was my friend, he was my coach, he was my mentor. Those are identity statements. If you take, for example, a sexual abuse victim, if you try to tell her feelings of being uncomfortable in her body and her sexual urges are her identity, they are who she is. No, we don't do that with sexual abuse victims. We tell them you are a daughter, you are loved, you are worthy of protection, you are valued, your body is sacred, that you have a voice, you have gifts and talents and abilities, and you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be, there's so many words that we can speak into a young person's identity. But we do not teach, we do not believe in sexual identity. As Christians, we don't believe in that because Jesus didn't call the woman caught in adultery an adulteress. He called her forgiven, loved, seen. No. The Ethiopian eunuch was not transgender. He was saved, healed, delivered. He was a child of God. So God doesn't do that. We cannot do that anymore as a society. We have to push back against this ideology and the concept of gender identity, that you can have an identity separate from your biological body. Well, you teach this on your podcast. Body, soul, and spirit are connected. I experience the world through my body. And to teach a whole generation of young people that you can somehow disassociate from your body, and what happens in the body doesn't happen in the soul. You can castrate a young boy or stop the puberty of a young girl, and it won't affect her mind or her will, her emotions. I mean, it's going to wreak havoc on her mind. And so we're standing here and we're watching this medical social experiment on the children of our nation. And if that doesn't get you up out of your seat, then you're just too apathetic, is what I would honestly say. Those doctors and custodians who are taking down the boy and girl bathroom signs, well, those custodians are men, and they need to stand up for the girls in those schools.
That's right.
These coaches, doctors, pastors, lawyers, everybody needs to use their influence in whatever way they have.
I was watching the news, and thank you for saying that. That's exactly what we need. We need people, like, everyone has a different breaking point, right? What they'll take until they break. And I've been there for a while now. Obviously, you're there, and I think the people they can't be silent anymore. And the churches pastors need to be talking about this stuff. They can't be silent anymore and be worried about people leaving their church. If anything, they'll probably fill their church up because people are craving truth right now so badly. I saw a report on the news not a few months ago from my high school that I grew up in Connecticut. We're in Florida now for over 20 years, but in Little Connecticut, Brookfield, Connecticut, there was a national news story about a tampon dispenser that had been ripped out of the boys' bathroom within like 30 minutes of it being installed. And then the post I saw was a little bit of a satire. It said, "What took so long?" Because and I can put myself there as a teenage boy, what I would have thought seeing a feminine product dispenser being put into my bathroom. I would have been one of the first ones in there too to rip it off the wall and throw it outside, because I would have been like, what in the heck is going on around here? And this is obviously, that's not the only woke area of the country where they're doing such things that don't make any sense. It really doesn't. So, and my question is, I guess it's almost a little bit of humor. Who is that dispenser for? Is it for women who are identifying as boys, using the boys' locker room or bathroom, and then realize they still have a need as a woman?
It's just feeding an unbelievable source of confusion into these kids' lives. And it's so laughable and crazy to us. But at the same time, it's feeding this confusion among young people, and they are the victims. I was speaking at an event recently in Wisconsin at a girls' conference, and I had all these kids come up to me, and they were telling me that they were putting litter boxes in their girls' bathrooms for the furries, the people who identify as animals. And the fact that these administrators, teachers, school board members, this is all obviously their fault, okay? Because they're participating in the lie. They're either brainwashed themselves and usually just in fear of speaking up, or they're intentionally causing this kind of confusion. And I was just very clear with the girls. Look, you pick up the litter box and you walk it straight to the principal's office and you drop it at his front door. And you do it however many times you need to do it. But the thing is these girls, they were shocked that I was telling them to defy authority and to speak up. But if Rosa Parks never got up from the back of the bus,
that's right. If
Martin Luther King never spoke, what would have changed? And so they have to learn what a righteous resistance looks like. We need to teach them to speak the truth about these things without fear, but it's going to take the adults being adults and living up to our God-given name as for men, the warrior protectors. Actually, men and women are warrior protectors of the human family. And we have to rise up to our identity and teach them the difference between the voice of the foolish woman in wisdom in Proverbs and the voice of the wise woman, because both voices are speaking into the nation, and one leads people to hell and destruction, and one leads people to life. And one way that we protect life is by teaching girls how to protect their boundaries. But if we just let all these men into our sports and our prisons, our bathrooms and tampon, then we're not teaching them how to put healthy boundaries around themselves. And that is our job as the adults. This is not the girls' problem to be left with. This happened on our watch. It's our responsibility to protect these kids. It's our responsibility to hold the boundaries and saying, you let a boy on my daughter's sports team and we are boycotting, and so is every other adult in my community.
Yeah. I mean, it's just simple things. Any dad listening right now, how would you feel if you saw a man who was acting as a woman, a grown man, walk into a girl's bathroom seconds after your 7, 10-year-old daughter walked in to use that bathroom? How would that make you feel? Would that make you feel warm and fuzzy that everything was just going to be fine? Or that there was a mentally ill man who was identifying himself as a woman in a woman's bathroom, all of a sudden, like legally, or whatever you want to call it, depending on what part of the country you're in. I mean, as a man, I would go in after that person or block the door. You're not getting in. That's my daughter in there right now. She's going to use the ladies' room, and when she's done, we'll be leaving, and you should get the hell out of here. And I've seen some of these like little videos of such things happening, but it works both ways. It goes both ways, and it has to. Some people will not take action until they feel like they've been personally involved in a crisis like that. I guess that people are okay. They don't like confrontation, and they'd rather just stick their heads in the sand, I guess, and stay away from those types of things until it's probably too late, right? Until it's actually happening right in front of them. And I guess maybe it hasn't happened in front of enough people where it's been seemingly a personal experience rather than just something that they've heard of or seen in the news, so it doesn't feel real yet. But it feels real enough to me to start to talk about it and to start fixing it.
Well, there's a small percentage of people who are going to stand up. There's a very large percentage of people that will just go along with a movement like this. So then you take the percentage of people who know it's wrong and the percentage of people who actually will stand up and lay down their lives for it. And that's a small percentage. But that percentage, I think it might be 5%, that percentage of people can turn the entire tide. And so we saw that with the Black rights movement. And there were some people who didn't, stand up. But the small percentage of people became a movement that turned the tide. So we have a great opportunity to course correct the nation, but it's going to take a lot of prayer and a lot of personal responsibility on every single person in their sphere of influence.
Yeah, speaking of that, as I alluded to earlier, because there are a lot of kind of maybe not even quiet anymore, but angry people who want to speak up, who want to start doing something. Do you have advice for those people? Like, what can they start to do in their community, in their neighborhoods, in their home to start taking steps towards truth being heard and truth being acted upon in everyday life? I mean, if I was to give advice, I'd say, well, get out into the community and do something like coach or be involved on some level with your local school. And as a person, because your kids need your voice in their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every one of us has to be a part of speaking the truth to the next generation. And that's why I wrote my book, and that's why I want people to have this conversation honestly and openly. But, there's the wise woman of Proverbs and the foolish woman. I really looked at that because this answer to what is a woman question, you see that people who exalt sexuality as identity, they eventually are going to destruct because that's just not our identity. But the wise woman also uses her voice, and she takes a stand. At the crossroads, she takes a stand as to right and wrong. And this is our opportunity right now to do that. And we have to do it. We absolutely have to do it to save the next generation of kids.
And you have some exciting things coming up not too long here for people to start signing up for in September. You please tell us and our audience more about what you're going to be doing here this fall.
Absolutely. My I Am a Woman book, Taking Back Our Name, we're doing book clubs for women and families all over the nation, and those start on September 19th. So you can join online. If you're in the DFW region, you can join me personally. But go to my website, iamawoman.us, to find out more about the book and how you can get connected to our small groups, because the online groups are going to be incredible, and we're all going to take back our name woman by honoring men and honoring the family. And this is just a great opportunity to do that.
And this is a 100% virtual experience here?
Yeah, there will be. I do in-person groups here in DFW, but it will be a virtual experience in which I'll be teaching the gendered names of Genesis and the entire human family: male, female, man, woman, brother, sister, father, mother. The deep Hebrew meanings of those names. And as you study those names, you are going to rise to your God-given calling. You're going to understand, religion tells you what to do, but God tells you who you are.
Yeah.
And when you know who you are, you know what to do.
Yeah.
And so it's going to empower people also to understand thought reform movements and how we can use our voice to make a difference.
Yeah. Hey, Jesus wasn't really a big fan of religion either, in air quotes. He came so that we would know God and know His heart, and to know Him and to make Him known. And that's what people need to do right now. And you can share the truth with people as long as it's done with grace. You have to do it in a way where you show that you care for people. And but truth should never be canceled, no matter how much blowback, or friction that you're feeling. And Jennifer, I'm just so. It always makes me feel so good that there's people like you in the world doing something about this, and that there are truth seekers and truth speakers, because it seems like we've had quite a shortage of those folks for a while, and it seems like maybe they're finally acting and coming out of the woodwork. Not that you have, you've been doing this now for quite a while, so we just need more of this to happen. And as you said, it only takes a certain number, a small percentage, to really have massive impact. And so I just, I know people listening are very interested in what you're doing and are going to check out your site. Where can they follow you on social channels?
You can find me at Jennifer Strickland _author. And I'm on Twitter now too, because there's some free speech there. And I'm on Twitter as iamawoman.us.
Otherwise known as X. But everyone's still, it's so funny because everyone still calls it Twitter. Like, no. It's really hard to change over, but well, this has been just a blessing, and we the Strong by Design team, all of us here at Critical Bench, we really appreciate your voice and what you're doing. Thank you so much for making time to be on our show today. It was really fantastic, and I know you'll have super success with this course starting in September. And that's just wonderful. Listeners, thank you so much for joining the Strong by Design podcast. Again, if you're an old listener and you have not yet given us a rating or a review, please do that, because it really does help us. We love to see and hear from you, and maybe get some ideas about future episodes. Please let us know what you're thinking and feeling. And if you're a new listener, we hope you enjoyed that conversation. I know I certainly did, and got a lot from it. And come back and listen next week. Every episode releases on Wednesday here, and sometimes we have extra episodes we release on Saturdays as well. But go back and binge listen. We have a lot of episodes there for you, and we just thank you so much. And remember, you are created strong by design, created in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.